Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. Carl Jung. You think you are in control. You think respect is earned through compliance, through bending, through pleasing. You wake each day measuring your words, your actions, your smiles, and calculating how others might perceive you. You adjust your tone, your opinion, your very presence, trying to fit the invisible mold that society hands you. And yet, every nod, every polite laugh, every handshake is conditional. You are respected only until your compliance ends. You are admired only until your freedom emerges. Control, you realize too late, is an illusion. The world does not respect what it can manipulate. It respects only what it cannot hold. You have been told that approval is power, that popularity is authority. Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." Real respect, the kind that trembles beneath the surface of human eyes, is born from autonomy, from mystery, from courage that does not seek applause. You cannot be measured, contained, or directed if you are fully alive within yourself. And yet, most of us never step into this reality. We surrender to expectation, not realizing that the chains we accept in polite silence are the very chains that rob us of respect. We fear rejection, fear disapproval, fear the judgment that inevitably follows the path of individuality. And so we kneel quietly in the court of others' control. Look around. At work, the colleague who always agrees, who laughs at the right jokes, who avoids conflict. He is tolerated, but never truly respected. On social media, the one who posts perfect smiles and curated victories draws admiration. Yet it is shallow, fleeting. In relationships, you have already felt it. The partner who respects you less when you assert your needs, who admires the version of you they can predict, who fears the real you stepping into the light. You see it everywhere, every day. The world rewards compliance, not authenticity. True respect is magnetic. It arrives when you stop performing, when you stop negotiating your soul. It arrives only when you become untouchable, not by force, but by the quiet assertion of your inner authority. This is your first awakening, the painful truth that will echo through every relationship, every choice, every thought. People only respect what they cannot control, and as you recognize it, a shiver runs through your spine, for it is both terrifying and liberating. It is terrifying because it means your life, your respect, your worth has never been in the hands of others. It is liberating because you realize that the power to earn true respect lies within the walls of your own self. Stop bending. Stop shrinking. Stand unmoved in the presence of others' expectations. The world will lean in, not to command you, but to behold you. Respect is earned when you cannot be owned. People will do anything, however humiliating, to avoid confronting themselves. Carl Jung, you convince yourself that comfort is safety. You cling to routines, to patterns, to relationships that promise warmth without risk. You tell yourself it is love when it is dependence. You call it trust when it is conformity. You smile, you nod, you perform the roles expected of you, hoping for approval, for acceptance, for the illusion of belonging. And in that quiet obedience, you forget the cost. You surrender the contours of your own soul to the expectations of another. You trade autonomy for security, for predictability, for the false embrace of being wanted. But what you are really wanting for is your compliance, your pliancy, your silence. Comfort, you discover too late, is a cage disguised as a blanket. Observe the mirage of affection around you. The colleague who never challenges, who always agrees, who laughs when expected. He is rewarded with smiles, promotions, subtle nods. The partner who fears your power, who rewards only predictability, who punishes assertion with cold distance. This is not love. It is control masquerading as tenderness. On social media, notice how curated lives are applauded, how masks are celebrated as authenticity. People reward what they can predict, what they can influence, what they can measure. And you, in your longing for connection, have mistaken approval for respect. You have mistaken silence for intimacy, predictability for admiration, and subservience for affection. The truth sits in the quiet corners of your mind, whispered like a shadow. Compliance never equals reverence. The consequences of these false bonds ripple through every corner of your life. Your identity softens, your edges dull, your voice becomes hesitant. You feel the gnawing emptiness of relationships built on convenience rather than truth. You wake in the night with the subtle ache of longing, the shadow of knowing you have given too much, too willingly, for too little. Your desires, your passions, your authentic self are muted under the weight of expectation. And still, you chase the mirage, believing that loyalty, love, or respect can be purchased through obedience. But the deeper you sink into these false comforts, the further you drift from the gravity of your own soul. This is the revelation that will pierce the quiet of your complacency. The respect you seek, the love you crave, the comfort you cling to. None of it holds true power if it is bought with your submission. Autonomy is the silent magnet. Mystery is the unseen force. The fire within cannot be measured, contained, or rewarded by the timid praise of others. True connection, true admiration, and true love exist only when you are free, when your boundaries are unyielding, when your voice resounds even in the presence of disapproval. Let this truth settle, heavy and luminous, inside your chest. Stop trading your freedom for shallow affirmation. Stand in the quiet storm of your own self-possession and watch the world respond, not with control, but with awe. Love demands freedom, not obedience. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Carl Jung, you walk through life believing you are in control, that every choice you make is deliberate, rational, conscious. Yet beneath the surface, unseen currents pull you. Childhood wounds, quiet humiliations, the small betrayals you thought you had forgotten, they linger. They shape your desires, your fears, the people you are drawn to, and the patterns you cannot escape. The shadow, that hidden part of yourself, is not a phantom. It is your own history writing itself into the present. Every irritation, every overreaction, every longing that feels out of proportion traces back to a wound you never named, a memory you never processed, a rejection you never fully felt. You are not merely living. You are being directed, quietly and invisibly, by these unseen forces. Look closely at the choices you think are yours, the relationships you cling to, the arguments you provoke, the moments when you assert control too aggressively or retreat too easily. These are the shadow speaking. Pain becomes a puppeteer. Trauma whispers instructions you mistake for instinct. You find yourself manipulating others or surrendering entirely, seeking control in the external world because the internal world feels unsafe. That constant need for validation, that subtle fear of abandonment, the urge to dominate or please, it is all the shadow's script. You are the actor, but not yet the director. Every reaction that surprises you, every emotion that feels too heavy, every pattern repeated despite your conscious intention, is the shadow making its presence known. It is the pain you carry, deciding for you, shaping the life you believe you chose. And yet, there is a revelation buried in this truth. The shadow is not merely a tormentor, it is a doorway. The wounds that dictate your fear can also seed power. Each suppressed desire, each unacknowledged rage, each hidden longing contains the raw material of autonomy. To face the shadow is not to be consumed by it. It is to illuminate it, to trace its patterns, to confront the reasons you have sought respect and love in all the wrong places. When you begin to name the pain, to see how it has controlled you, you start reclaiming agency. You begin to choose differently, to act from your own will, not the silent scripts of trauma. This confrontation is not gentle. It is unsettling, intimate, terrifying. But it is also the only path to true respect and freedom. You are not the puppet of your wounds. You are the witness, the learner, the emerging sovereign. The shadow waits, silent yet insistent, until you look directly into it, until you understand its language, until you step beyond fear and claim your own authority. Only then do you discover that every fear it fed you was a lesson in disguise, every limitation a call to courage, every hidden corner of yourself a wellspring of untapped strength. Stand in this realization. Face the darkness and let it teach you the depth of your own power. Your shadow is your greatest guide. You are what you do, not what you say you'll do. Carl Jung. You stare into the mirror and barely recognize the reflection staring back. The carefully constructed mask, the one you've worn for years to please, to avoid conflict, to seem acceptable, crumbles in your hands. Every polite nod, every smile aimed at reassurance, every silence maintained to keep the peace suddenly feels heavy, hollow, false. You see your motives laid bare. The fear of rejection, the desperate need to belong, the compulsive urge to be liked. The truth pierces you like a storm in the night. You have been performing, not living. You are confronted with the raw, unfiltered patterns that have guided your life, the unconscious scripts repeating without consent, and the disorientation is terrifying. It feels like standing on a cliff, looking down into a stormy abyss, unsure whether you will fall or survive. Every choice you thought was yours suddenly feels borrowed. Every desire borrowed from someone else's expectation. The facade shatters, and you are left with fragments of a self you barely know. Submission to others' expectations has been your quiet prison. For years, you traded authenticity for approval, exchange for nods, validation for silence. At work, you deferred to colleagues even when your instincts screamed. In friendships, you masked opinions to avoid conflict. In love, you molded yourself to be tolerable, acceptable, safe. And the cost surfaces now with brutal clarity. The hollow echo of your own voice, the subtle shame of compromise, the tension of a self that struggles to assert independence. You realize how much of your life has been borrowed from the desires of others, how much strength has been surrendered for the illusion of acceptance. The self you are supposed to inhabit is distant, fragmented, and aching for recognition. This erosion of identity leaves a quiet emptiness, a subtle despair that seeps into every thought, every action, every hesitation. Then comes the moment when despair and confrontation collide. A sudden insight, a piercing clarity, or a crushing disappointment. The world aligns to show you exactly how far you have drifted from yourself. It may be a failed relationship, a career collapse, a betrayal by someone you trusted. It may be the quiet realization that you have been invisible to yourself all along. The weight is unbearable. Rage, shame, fear, all rise in unison. A storm inside your chest. You want to flee, to hide, to retreat into what is familiar. But nothing familiar remains. This is the lowest point. The crucible, where identity fragments completely, where the pieces of self lie, scattered across the floor. And yet, in this chaos, there is a silent invitation. to pick up the pieces, to understand the truth of your patterns, to reclaim the life that has been shadowed by fear and compliance. The collapse is not the end. It is the clearing before dawn. In the wreckage of your old self, you begin to glimpse the first light of autonomy. You feel the tremor of possibility beneath the rubble, the whisper of freedom that has always existed but was buried beneath performance and fear. You do not yet know the path forward, but you feel the urgency of choice, the momentum of transformation. Stand here for a moment, feel the weight, the loss, the raw exposure, and know that in this devastation lies your liberation. From brokenness, the true self rises. People are often frightened by the truth of their own hearts. Carl Jung, you look back at the chapters of your life and see patterns that had been invisible until now. The relationships you cherished, the friendships you clung to, the partnerships you believed were love, they were built on control, not care. The late-night arguments, the subtle manipulations, the silences that screamed louder than words, they were never proof of affection. They were proof of power, of dominance, of fear, disguised as connection. You begin to recognize it. Respect was never present where your freedom was constrained. Love was never present where your voice was silenced. Every attachment that left you feeling diminished, anxious, or inadequate was never a reflection of your worth. It was a reflection of another's need to hold sway over your life. Seeing clearly is the first step toward liberation. You replay memories with new eyes, noticing how people rewarded compliance, punished dissent, or nurtured dependency. The betrayal you felt was never about you failing. It was about them asserting control. The disregard you endured was never evidence of your insufficiency. It was the echo of their fear of your autonomy. You recall moments at work, in relationships, in family gatherings, when your instincts sought respect, and yet the responses were always contingent on your obedience. The clarity is both painful and illuminating. The mirror of the past no longer lies to you. It reflects the truth that freedom and respect cannot coexist with manipulation or submission. And yet, in this clarity comes an unexpected gift: freedom. The truth that it was never love, never genuine regard, lifts a burden you carried unknowingly. The anger, the sadness, the disappointment all begin to dissolve into understanding. You realize that the power to honor yourself was never outside. It was always within. Letting go of dependency on external validation opens a space inside where your authority, your self-respect, and your authenticity can finally breathe. You no longer measure yourself against approval, no longer chase a version of connection that was never real. In the stillness of this release, you feel strength, a quiet sovereignty that grows with each conscious breath. This is your reframe. The past cannot bind you because it was never love. It was never your truth. What matters now is your presence, your voice, your choices. The attachments that once held you now dissolve, leaving room for authenticity. The illusions that once caused pain now teach discernment. And as you stand in this clarity, the weight of old patterns lifts. You are free to create relationships that honor autonomy, to command respect through being rather than performing, to love without losing yourself. Freedom begins where false love ends. The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Carl Jung, you stand before the darkness within yourself, the part of you you have hidden, ignored, or denied, the anger you buried, the desires you suppressed, the shame you pretended didn't exist, stares back at you now, unblinking. It is uncomfortable, raw, unsettling, and yet alive. Every suppressed memory, every avoided confrontation, every unexpressed feeling rises like a storm from the depths. You feel it as a weight on your chest, a knot in your stomach, a tremor in your hands. You want to turn away, to retreat into the familiar illusions of control. But something deeper pulls you forward. This is the shadow, the hidden self, the force that has shaped your life in silence. And now, you meet it. You do not flinch. You do not hide. You look directly into the corners of your mind, where fear, rage, and vulnerability have been waiting, quietly, for acknowledgement. Engaging with this darkness is not passive. It is an act of courage. You let the anger speak. You let the pain breathe. You trace the contours of your shame with steady eyes. Each suppressed desire you name. Each wound you acknowledge. Each memory you face becomes a tool, a lantern, illuminating the path out of fear. You see how the shadows that once controlled your actions now teach you the architecture of strength. The vulnerabilities you feared exposing become the bridge to authenticity. You begin to realize that weakness only exists where avoidance rules. Power exists where recognition and confrontation live. Your shadow is not a monster. It is a teacher, a guide, a map to the hidden chambers of your courage. You feel it stirring inside, the energy of all that you have denied, now ready to fuel transformation. From this recognition comes mastery. You understand that embracing your darkness does not diminish you. It grants agency. The quiet fears that dictated your decisions, the rage that erupted in hidden corners, the desires that you disguised as faults, all become the raw material of self-command. You begin to act from a place of conscious authority, choosing how and when to respond, choosing presence over reaction. In this alignment, the world reacts differently. People sense the unshakable ground beneath your feet, the calm within your storm, the integrity in your choices. They are drawn, not out of fear, not out of control, but out of a recognition that you are untouchable, not by dominance, but by sovereignty. True respect, you see, flows to those who cannot be manipulated, to those who have mastered themselves. You stand taller, not because the world has bowed, but because you have met yourself fully.